The cargo ship Endeavor's Grace floated quietly in the black sea of space. Its engines hummed low, steady, and tired, much like its crew. Among them was Ethan Vale, a young human technician assigned to keep the ship's life support systems running. He wasn't a soldier, not a hero, just a man trying to survive his first contract on a mixed-species mercenary ship. The Grace carried a small group of soldiers for hire, humans, a few reptilian Torgans and one intimidating warrior from the alien race known as Vazari. Her name was Karena, tall, silver-skinned, with armor that looked like living metal. The other mercenaries called her the Iron Huntress. Ethan mostly tried to avoid her. Vazari weren't known for their patience, and Karena especially had none for humans. She had fought in wars before humans had even left their own solar system. To her, Ethan was a fragile creature, soft, slow, and nervous. That morning, the ship had just finished a long job escorting a trade convoy through pirate space. Everyone was exhausted. Ethan was crawling through the maintenance vents, checking thermal lines that had overheated during combat. His shift was supposed to end 2 hours ago, but the captain wanted the ship ready for the next jump. "Just my luck," he muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Fixing leaks while everyone else sleeps." He reached the end of the vent and pushed open the small panel leading into the auxiliary quarters, one of the least used rooms. He climbed halfway out and froze. Across the room, Karena stood near her locker, removing pieces of her heavy armor. The armor was biological, part metal, part living organism, and it peeled away from her body like silver scales dissolving into mist. Ethan's eyes widened. He wasn't watching out of desire. It was pure shock. He had never seen anything like it. Her skin shimmered like liquid chrome under the ship's dim lights. Before he could move or speak, Karena turned. Her eyes, pale, glowing with faint violet light, locked on him. The air grew cold. "Human," she said, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "You dare spy on a Vazari warrior during disarmament?" Ethan's heart leapt into his throat. He scrambled to explain, hands up. Wait. I didn't mean, it's just the maintenance vent. I was checking the thermal lines." Her expression didn't soften. She walked toward him, her footsteps heavy and precise. The biological armor dissolved completely into her locker, leaving her wearing a tight, functional undersuit of woven nanofiber. Even clothed, she radiated danger. Ethan backed up into the vent like a trapped animal. "I swear, I didn't even know this room was occupied." Karena stopped just a meter away from him. For a long second, she said nothing. Then she tilted her head. "You are either a fool or a liar. Both are punishable by discipline." Ethan's palms were slick with sweat. "Please, I'm just an engineer. Ask the captain. He sent me to fix the overheating." "I wasn't peeping. I swear on the void." She studied him in silence, her eyes scanning his face and searching for deceit. The Vazari could sense micro changes in heart rate, temperature, even breathing. It was said they could smell fear. After several seconds, Karena finally spoke again. "Your fear is honest," she said, "and your shame seems genuine. But ignorance is not an excuse on a mercenary vessel." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "You're not gonna throw me out the airlock, right?" he asked weakly. Her lips curved slightly and not quite a smile, more like amusement. "Not yet. You will, however, repay the insult." He blinked. "Repay it? How?" "You will serve me directly for the next 7 cycles. Repairs, diagnostics, whatever I require. You will make yourself useful, human. Consider it. Compensation." Ethan wanted to protest, but he wasn't in a position to argue with a warrior who could probably crush him with one hand. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. Karena turned away, retrieving her armor's gauntlet. "You may go. And human," he froze mid-step. "If I ever find you where you should not be again, I will not ask questions next time." Ethan nodded so fast it hurt his neck. "Understood." He climbed back into the vent and hurried away, his heart still racing. That night, as the ship drifted through space, Ethan lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. The other human crew members had already heard rumors. Apparently, one of the Torgans had seen Karena's expression and decided it was a miracle Ethan was still alive. He couldn't sleep. Part of him was angry at the universe's cruel timing. Another part was fascinated, not just by Karena herself, but by what he had seen. That living armor, the alien technology merging with biology. He had read about Vazari biotech in the archives, but seeing it in person was like glimpsing a piece of magic. Still, Tomorrow would be worse. He had to work under her supervision now. The next morning, Karena appeared in the engineering bay like a storm cloud. The other technicians stepped aside immediately. Ethan swallowed his nerves and saluted awkwardly. "Reporting for, assignment?" Karena didn't respond for a moment. She simply handed him a datapad. "These are the diagnostics for my armor symbiote. It must be recalibrated after every mission. You will assist." Ethan blinked at the complex alien script on the screen. Right, I can try." Karena's gaze narrowed. "You will not try. You will learn." She led him to the repair chamber where her armor rested inside a containment pod, floating like liquid metal, breathing softly. The sound was eerie, almost alive. "Is it conscious?" Ethan asked before thinking. Karena glanced at him. "It is semi-sentient. It responds to neural signals and requires maintenance just as flesh does." Ethan watched the silvery fluid pulse with faint light. He felt awe more than fear now. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Karena looked at him strangely, not with anger this time, but with quiet curiosity. Few humans ever said such things about Visari technology. Most called it unnatural, frightening. "Perhaps you are not entirely foolish," she said finally. They worked in silence for hours. Ethan followed her instructions carefully, his clumsy human hands learning the delicate patterns of Visari tools. Several times Karena corrected him, her patience surprisingly steady. At one point he accidentally connected two wrong cables, causing a spark of blue energy. The armor twitched inside the pod. Ethan yelped. Karena stepped forward instantly, pressing a control rune to stabilize it. "You could have triggered a neural feedback loop," she said sternly. Sorry, I'm still learning," Ethan said quickly. Karena studied him again. There was no hatred in her voice now, only a cold kind of mentorship. "Then learn faster." By the end of the shift, Ethan's hands were trembling from exhaustion. Karena dismissed him with a brief nod. "You did not fail completely today. That is improvement." For her, that was probably a compliment. As he left the chamber, Ethan couldn't help but smile slightly. The fear had faded a little. Maybe, just maybe, he could prove himself. He didn't know that Karena, after he left, lingered by the armor pod, her eyes distant. "Strange creature," she murmured to herself. "He looks upon the armor of my people and sees beauty, not fear." For a Visari, that was unsettling. Outside, through the viewport, the stars drifted by silently, unaware that a small misunderstanding between a human engineer and an alien warrior was slowly becoming something that might change both of their worlds. The Endeavor's grace drifted silently through the void, its hull scratched and scorched from previous skirmishes with space pirates. Inside, life continued in quiet rhythms, the hum of engines, the occasional beep of diagnostic systems, and the steady footsteps of mercenaries preparing for the next contract. Ethan Vale sat at the edge of the common deck, attempting to decipher a maintenance manual written in a mix of human and Visari scripts. The letters twisted and shimmered on the page, reflecting alien logic that his human mind struggled to grasp. Still, he persisted. He wasn't alone for long. Karena stepped into the room, moving with her usual fluid precision. Her silver eyes scanned the deck before landing on him. "You are still studying," she said. Her voice carried no judgment, just observation. I want to understand your armor fully," Ethan admitted. "If I can manage the repairs properly, it might save you, and the crew, if there's trouble." Karena tilted her head. For a Visari, curiosity was dangerous. It often led to unexpected trust. "You value survival." "Yes," Ethan said without hesitation. "And I don't want to cause more problems." She made a low sound in her throat, the Visari equivalent of a nod. "Perhaps you have learned one thing." "That is acceptable." The calm didn't last. Hours later, the ship's alarms blared, an urgent, high-pitched warning that made the walls vibrate. Ethan bolted upright, nearly dropping his manual. "Pirates!" shouted one of the Torgan crew members, a stocky, scaled warrior named Greythawk. "Sensors detect multiple ships approaching. They are fast, well-armed, and aggressive." Ethan's stomach nodded. "How fast?" he asked. Karena appeared beside him. Her armor was already on, full, gleaming, alive with energy. "Fast enough to reach us in 10 minutes. They will breach if we do not act." The Grace was a cargo ship, not a warship. Its weapons were limited, its crew small. Panic flared in the human technicians around him. But Ethan realized something. He wasn't going to cower. He had spent the last few days learning from Karena, and some of that knowledge could be useful. "Karena," he called, his voice firm despite the fear. "I can help with the secondary systems, reroute power to the shields, manage internal compartments, and maybe slow them down." She looked at him, a flash of surprise crossing her usually unreadable expression. "Do you have the courage to act when everything fails?" "I will try," he said. "I won't hide this time." Her eyes narrowed, studying him carefully. Finally, she said, "Then follow me quickly." The bridge of the ship was chaos. Lights flashed red, alarms screamed, and the Torgans barked orders at each other. Karena moved through the crowd like a predator through the underbrush, calm, precise, and commanding. Ethan followed, holding a data pad with schematics for the ship's secondary systems. "Here," he said, pointing at a panel of circuits. "I can control power flow from here. I can divert shields to the front hull and reinforce the airlocks." Karena crouched beside him. "You are human. Your hands shake, your mind doubts. Yet this is your role. Execute it." Ethan swallowed, feeling his pulse hammering. He had never operated a ship's combat systems before. But Karena's presence, her confidence, made him focus. Carefully, he began rerouting power, following her silent instructions. Outside the viewport, the pirate ships appeared, sleek, black, and armed with energy cannons that glowed like angry suns. They advanced without hesitation. "Steady," Karena said. Her hand rested lightly on the console, her eyes never leaving the viewport. "Do not fear the attack. Fear is a tool. Fear guides awareness. Use it." Ethan's fingers flew across the controls, sweat pouring down his forehead. The shields flickered under fire, the hull shuddered, and alarms screamed. But slowly he managed to stabilize the systems. The ship's defenses held just enough to prevent immediate destruction. Karena glanced at him, a rare acknowledgement of approval. "Not useless," she said quietly. Ethan blinked. I did it?" "For now," she replied. "Survival is a moment-by-moment task. Do not grow proud." The pirate ships weren't finished. They began a boarding maneuver, launching pods directly at the hull. The ship rocked violently as several pods slammed into the airlock. Ethan's mind raced. "Karena, the secondary compartments. If we seal them and redirect the intruders, we can control their entry." She nodded sharply. "Good. Human, your thinking aligns with efficiency. Execute." Together, they worked with the rest of the crew. Ethan's technical knowledge and Karena's combat expertise blended perfectly. He rerouted doors and automated traps while she coordinated the crew's defensive positions. For the first time, Ethan felt not just fear, but purpose. He was contributing. He was making a difference. The first wave of pirate pods crashed against the reinforced airlocks and were repelled. The pirates fired lasers and grenades, but the ship's adaptive shields and well-prepared crew held them off. Karena moved like a shadow, her armor shifting and glinting as she neutralized any intruders who made it past the outer defenses. Ethan watched in awe, realizing the warrior's reputation was well-earned. But more than that, he noticed something he hadn't before. She wasn't just fighting. She was coordinating. She saw him as a partner, not a threat, not a human to ignore. Hours passed in chaos. The battle was intense, testing every ounce of courage in the small crew. Ethan's hands ached, his lungs burned, but he refused to stop. Karena remained at his side through it all, a silent mentor, a living weapon, a reminder that humans could rise to challenges when they were willing to try. Finally, the pirate fleet retreated. Their ships vanished into the dark void, leaving the Grace battered but intact. Silence fell over the bridge. The crew slumped in exhaustion, bruised and tired but alive. Ethan let out a shaky breath. We made it." Karena stood still for a moment, scanning the aftermath. Then she turned to him. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of rare acknowledgement. "You are not weak, human. Today you were useful. More than useful, you acted when others froze." Ethan blinked. You think so?" "Yes," she said simply. "I expected incompetence. You delivered competence. That is rare among humans." For a human raised on doubt and modesty, it felt like a small victory. Ethan's chest swelled with pride. He had survived the first true test not by hiding, not by avoiding danger, but by standing and acting when it mattered most. Karena didn't smile. Visari rarely did. But there was a subtle softening in her eyes. For the first time, she seemed to respect him as more than a clumsy technician. He had earned her trust. Later in the quiet of the engineering bay, Ethan checked the armor systems again, ensuring no damage had occurred during the battle. Karena observed him silently, leaning against the wall. "You have skill," she said, almost as an afterthought, "but skill without composure is useless." "Remember this." "I will," Ethan said. "Thank you for trusting me." Her gaze lingered on him, sharp but not hostile. "Trust is earned. Today you have begun that process. Do not waste it." Ethan nodded, silently promising himself that he wouldn't. He had begun to understand something about the Vessery, and about himself. Humans might be smaller, weaker, and inexperienced compared to warriors like Karena, but when they dared to act with courage, they could hold their own even against the impossible. The stars outside the viewport continued to drift silently, indifferent to the small victories and lessons inside the Grace. But inside, a new partnership had formed, fragile, unlikely, yet full of potential. And for Ethan, the memory of the first day he had been caught peeping at Karena faded. It no longer mattered. What mattered now was trust, courage, and the willingness to rise when fate demanded it. The Endeavor's Grace glided silently through deep space, its hull still bearing scratches and scorch marks from the last encounter. Ethan Vale moved through the corridors, checking systems and keeping an eye on the sensors. The adrenaline of the previous battle still pulsed in his veins, a reminder that space was unpredictable, and life was fragile. Karena appeared beside him as he reached the engineering bay. "Human," she said, her silver eyes sharp as ever. "You have improved. Today you will see if improvement is enough." Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" "An unknown vessel approaches. It is not a pirate ship, it is..." "Different," she replied, already walking toward the bridge. "And it will test your courage." The words made his stomach twist. He had survived one battle, but the idea of another, especially with an unknown opponent, one I was frightening. Yet there was no choice. In the mercenary life, hesitation could be fatal. The bridge was tense. Sensors displayed the approaching vessel. Sleek, black, and massive, unlike anything the crew had ever encountered. It wasn't firing weapons, but its presence radiated threat. Every crew member held their breath as Karena issued precise orders. "Shields up. All systems to combat readiness. Humans, follow my instructions exactly. Any mistake could cost us everything." Ethan nodded. He had learned from the last fight, and he was determined not to fail. As he monitored the secondary power systems, Karena guided him, her voice calm and precise. "Divert auxiliary power to forward shields. Reinforce airlocks 2 and 3. Keep sensors clear." Ethan's hands moved quickly, rerouting energy and activating automated defenses. Sweat poured down his face, but he didn't stop. Outside, the mysterious vessel closed in. It had no visible weapons, but energy signatures began appearing along its hull. Karena leaned over the viewport, studying it carefully. "They are preparing," she said. "This is no ordinary attack. Their tactics are unfamiliar. Expect the unexpected." Suddenly, the vessel emitted a pulse, a wave of energy that made the Grace shudder violently. Lights flickered, systems went offline, and alarms screamed. Ethan's heart raced. "Karena!" "Shields are failing." "Stay calm," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Panic kills. Think clearly." Ethan forced himself to focus. He rerouted power manually, bypassing damaged circuits, and stabilized the shields just enough to withstand the next pulse. Karena watched him, impressed by his quick thinking. "You are improving faster than I expected," she said. "Good, but do not grow complacent," Ethan swallowed. "I won't. I promise." The alien ship attacked again, this time launching pods that clung to the hull. Each pod emitted a strange energy field that threatened to destabilize the ship's systems. Karena activated her armor's combat mode, moving through the corridors with fluid precision. She destroyed the pods with swift, calculated strikes while Ethan managed the ship's countermeasures. Together, they created a rhythm. Human ingenuity paired with alien strength. Hours passed in tense coordination. The unknown ship tested them with waves of energy, strange gravity fields, and intricate boarding attempts. But the crew of the Grace, guided by Karena and aided by Ethan's quick thinking, held their ground. Ethan realized something as he worked. Fear was no longer controlling him. He was using it. The pulse of adrenaline sharpened his focus, made him faster, smarter, more aware. He could survive because he refused to hide. At one point, a pod breached the inner hull. Ethan's eyes widened in panic. It was heading straight for the bridge. Without thinking, he grabbed a nearby magnetic wrench and hurled it with perfect precision, destroying the pod before it could reach the crew. Karena's eyes flicked toward him, surprise flashing across her usually unreadable face. "Not bad, human, that was efficient." Ethan's chest swelled. Praise from Karena was rare, and it felt like winning a war in itself. The final wave was the most dangerous. The unknown vessel unleashed a massive energy net that wrapped around the Grace, attempting to immobilize it. The crew struggled to maintain control as systems overloaded. "Ethan!" Karena shouted. "We cannot escape using standard methods. You must create a new path." He froze for a moment, scanning the schematics in his mind. I think I can redirect the auxiliary power to the reverse thrusters. It could push us free." Karena's eyes sharpened. "Do it now!" Ethan worked feverishly, rerouting circuits, opening bypass channels, and recalibrating energy flow. Sparks flew and the ship groaned under the strain. The energy net tightened. His hands burned, his mind raced, but he didn't stop. With one final adjustment, the Grace lurched forward, breaking free of the net. The unknown vessel recoiled, momentarily stunned. Karena moved beside Ethan, her armor humming with residual energy. "You did it," she said. "Your human instinct saved us." Ethan leaned against the console, breathing hard. We made it." The unknown ship retreated into the void, leaving the battered Grace in silence. The crew slumped, exhausted but alive. For the first time, Ethan felt true camaraderie with Karena. Fear, misunderstanding, and tension had given way to trust and mutual respect. Karena studied him carefully. "You faced fear and acted. That is the mark of a warrior, even if you are human." Ethan swallowed. I didn't think I could do it. But with you guiding me, You did not need guidance," she interrupted, her voice softening slightly. "You needed belief in yourself. That is something humans have. Courage even when you are weak, cleverness even when you are small. That is why you survived." For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of Karena's respect. It was more valuable than any medal or praise from a captain. Later, in the quiet of the ship's observation deck, Ethan and Karena watched the stars drift by. The battle had left them tired, but something profound had shifted. "You will continue to serve with me," Karena said finally. "Not because of punishment, but because you have earned it. Humans are unpredictable, and sometimes that is their greatest strength." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of pride he had never known. "I won't let you down." Karena's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "See that you do not. The universe tests all of us. Some fail. Some survive. You have begun to understand survival and courage." For a human engineer, it was more than he could have imagined. He had started as a nervous, inexperienced technician, caught in a misunderstanding. He had ended the journey as a capable, trusted member of a crew that spanned the stars, and had proven that humanity, despite its apparent fragility, could rise to challenges no one else dared face. The stars outside continued their silent drift, unaware of the small yet powerful story unfolding aboard the Endeavor's Grace. But within the ship, the bonds between human and Visari, fear and courage, inexperience and skill, had been forged, stronger than any metal, sharper than any weapon. And for Ethan Vale, the memory of the mistake that started it all, peeking at Karena during her armor removal, was no longer shameful. It was the beginning of a journey that tested him, shaped him, and proved that even a human could be extraordinary. Karena didn't smile, but her eyes held acknowledgement, a promise that the partnership was only beginning. Together they would face the unknown, the dangerous and the impossible. For humans, after all, the impossible was just another challenge waiting to be met.